Hi guys, I'm Yasmin.
And I'm Tucker. I was one of the Oxvloggers last year.
And I'm an Oxvlogger this year.
And we're both international reps at our college, so we thought it would be a really good opportunity to make a video about, applying as an international student, how to come here as an international student, everything that an international student would need to know if they were interested in coming to Oxford.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start with the really basic things. So UK universities in general have this system called UCAS, which is a website online, and you go there and that's where you begin your application.
So if you're interested in applying to Oxford as an undergraduate, the first thing that you need to do is find UCAS online. We'll drop the link to UCAS in the description below, and everything that we talk about today, we'll make sure to put all the links to all the different websites in the description below.
So on UCAS, it's really simple. You just fill out all your basic information, like your name, your place of birth, your citizenship, your birthday, all these basic things. And then the only personal part, well, there are actually two personal parts. The first one is your personal statement, which we'll talk a bit more about later, and the second part is a teacher reference, but you don't really have any control over that. And I think you if your school has a college counselor, they'll just know to fill it out. If not, you should approach a teacher that you feel could write something about you, academic focused, that would support your application.
So in terms of the personal statement,
big part.
Yeah, I applied from America. I had no idea what I was supposed to write in my personal statement. All I knew is that it was not supposed to be the same as the American Common App
not
essay.
like a dream essay.
It had to be something else. So there's actually a really good website that has a bunch of example personal statements online, and I used that basically, and I just went there and I read example personal statement after example personal statement, and it lists whether these people got into the universities that they applied to, so you can kind of tell this one seems like a good one, this one seems maybe not as good, and compare and see what techniques people used. I can't remember the name of the website right now, but I will make sure to drop a link in the description. That will happen, I promise. You will get all of these websites and information. But yeah, that's basically what I used to figure out how to write my personal statement.
I was much luckier because I went to an international school, so my school had a lot of experience in sending people to the US, the UK, and what our college counselors said was your personal statement is not personal in the sense that it's not like a US essay where you're talking about your hopes and your dreams and what inspired you, but it's more academic focused, so you should try and link it to the course that you want to study. And there's this whole myth that UK universities don't care about extracurriculars. The fact is they do if it links to your degree of choice. So for example, in my personal statement, I'm studying human sciences, which is all about the human experience. I talked about my work with this NGO called Operation Smile, and I linked it to cultures because they work in lots of different environments, and I linked it to public health because human sciences, we learn about disease and pathogens in the human body. So as long as whatever you're talking about links to the degree that you want to do, that's relevant. So I'd say see the personal statement as a way to be personal, but still professional and linked to your degree.
Just on the note of adding extracurriculars there, for example, I did a whole bunch of clubs when I was in high school. I didn't talk about most of them, but I studied philosophy and linguistics, and I happened to be the head of our linguistics club. We had one to do the linguistics Olympiad, so I talked about doing linguistics club and doing the linguistics Olympiad as part of my personal statement.
Oh, and also I think, I'm not sure how many personal statements you've read, but there's a tendency for people to just talk about books they've read linked to their degree. It doesn't have to be just books. You can drop in experiences, you can drop in your thoughts or events you've been to. But
I think the best things to do are to listen to teachers if they have experience helping people write personal statements. But if you come from a situation where you don't have anyone supporting you, go to this website, go to websites, search online for example personal statements, read people's personal statements, figure out what they were applying for, figure out where they got in. Of course, if you have any questions about personal statements, make sure to ask a question and we'll be happy to respond. But I hope that clears up some questions as how to write your personal statement. I think the best thing is not for us to tell you what it needs to be, but for you to actually see, to read some, because it's hard to describe what is a very kind of difficult to write document.
But keep in mind your personal statement is only one part of your application, and like things that are equally as important are like your qualifications, your teacher references, all that kind of thing.
So after you finish your personal statement, the next thing that you need to figure out are what qualifications you have in order to get into Oxford. And Oxford has a list on their website, which we will drop in the description below, of basically every country in the world and what qualifications they have available. In many cases, they don't accept qualifications from specific countries. So if you're like from one of those countries and you're like, how am I going to get into Oxford? In those cases, you're generally going to have to do the qualifications of another country. So you're going to have to figure out how to do A-levels in your country. You're going to have to figure out how to do the IB, the International Baccalaureate. Or I have a friend, for example, from South Korea who did American qualifications because they don't accept like the standard South Korean qualifications. So you basically have to figure out which qualifications are accepted and which ones that you can do.
Yeah, but obviously like taking on extra qualifications requires a lot of time, effort, and money. So I'd say my advice is only do it if you're really set on going abroad outside of your own country. Because
and if you want to go to the UK, then like generally the qualifications will be similar to those for Oxford, for other UK universities. We definitely recommend applying to other UK universities besides Oxford as well, but definitely obviously apply to Oxford. Great place.
Apply to Oxford.
And yeah, so you have to include either the qualifications you've already achieved, or if you're like applying to Oxford and you realize, oh, like crap, I haven't done any of these qualifications. Then what you have to do is basically say that you're going to do the qualifications. So you'll say that I'm planning to do this, and I think I'll get this on this test. So for example, if you've never studied any of the qualifications before, and you're like, I'm going to do the American qualifications in order to get into Oxford, you can write, I'm going to do this American test, and this American test, and I think I'm going to get this grade, and this grade on it. And then what will happen is if you get accepted, it will be contingent, it will be conditional on you actually achieving those grades. So if you haven't done, if you're like sitting here watching this video and you're like, oh no, I haven't done any of these qualifications yet, don't freak out. Most of the time you can do them like at the end of the year. But the one trick about that is that you were probably going to end up with a conditional offer, which is not ideal.
I actually went to a British international school in Thailand, so I did A-levels, so it wasn't too different for me, and I was like any other British kid where my offer was also conditional on me achieving the grades that I had to achieve at the end of my exams, which were in June. So my offer was conditional until I think August, when my results came out, and then they were like, you have a spot, and I was like, okay. Most
Americans have probably already done their qualifications before they apply. So in those cases, you won't receive like an explicitly unconditional offer, but what they'll say is it's like conditional on you sending in your test scores.
Right.
So I think that happens to a lot of people who have
what
already
did you
done.
need to send?
I had to like send in the test scores that I already achieved, so SATs, APs, stuff like that.
Cool.
And I had to just send proof that I actually did it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically qualifications done. Oh yeah, and like when you're applying for a course, I'd suggest going on the websites for all the courses, because it tells you like what you should be achieving to get an offer for that course. And generally it's about like a 38 on the IB for arts humanities courses, which is like an AAA, and then for science courses it's generally like A-star AA, and I think that's like a 41 on the IB. I'm not sure. Double check.
And also, like, if you're doing American qualifications and you're trying to figure out which, or if you're like signing up for A-levels and you're trying to figure out which ones you can take to be relevant to the course you want to do, they have a whole list of that on the website as well, where they basically say, if you want to study this, you should have studied, like if you want to study this at Oxford, you should have studied this in your school qualifications. And I will find a link to that and also drop it below. It's going to just be full of links, this description. Yeah. So many links.
Click through them all. The last part of UCAS is the college, because you need to indicate a preference for a college. And Oxford has, I believe, 38 colleges, but not all of them are undergraduate. So yeah, the college system is what makes Oxford unique. So unlike most universities around the world, or like most campus universities, Oxford is not a campus university, which means there is no physical, this is Oxford. Instead, Oxford is a city, and there are colleges, which are like buildings, or like
little mini campuses.
Little mini campuses, exactly, like scattered around the city, and they're in different locations, they're of different ages, they have different feels.
So despite it not being like a typical campus university, it does kind of have a campusy feel, because most of the colleges are like right next to each other and all like shoved in.
Yeah. But yeah, so your college is basically where you eat, where you sleep, where you'll meet probably like your first friends, and you'll have some classes in your college, so tutorials, but others might be in department buildings.
And so most colleges offer most courses. So basically, we definitely recommend that you choose a college instead of applying for an open offer. You can apply and say you don't have a college preference, but because most colleges offer most courses, most colleges are similar, but also they're a little different in terms of location, in terms of how many years they offer accommodation. Some of them they make you live out, some of them you have to live really far away, like some people like these things, but you should basically check. So on the website, they have a list of all the colleges, links to information about all the colleges, and basically also they have and they also have information about which colleges offer which courses. So what I did to pick my college was I clicked through each of the colleges that offered my course, which was about 15 of like the 30 undergraduate colleges, and I looked for things that mattered to me. So I said I want to be central and I want to have accommodation for my entire degree. So that's how I picked Brasenose College.
But then something to note about the colleges, and something that I didn't realize until I came here, was that the colleges really differ in their wealth, and this can really affect the student experience. So I go to one of the poorer colleges, which means I'm paying like this amount for my accommodation, but if I was at a richer college, I would be paying like almost half of what I'm paying here. Also like small things, so like food, the differences in the cost of food, that might matter to you if you can't cook, or if your college doesn't have cooking facilities and you need to eat in the dining hall. So that's something else to keep in mind, because something at my college that we always talk about is at Mansfield, we're very good at access, but once people get in the door, we're not so good at ensuring that they have an equal like experience here, just because we don't have as much money as other colleges to ensure like an equality of experience. But with that being said, all colleges do strive to give their students like
the best experience
they can, and I'm very happy at Mansfield, even though we're quite poor. But
yeah, so basically like colleges with larger endowments will tend to subsidize different things for their students to make prices a little bit cheaper. But these are all things that you can investigate. All of this information is publicly available online. And of course, if you have any questions about picking a college or anything that we've discussed so far in this video, please just
leave a comment.
Just leave a comment and we will answer. After you've finished all the components of your UCAS application, you've put in your predicted test scores, personal statement, teacher recommendation, all of your personal information, the next thing to do is submit it. And the submission needs to happen before October 15th every year, I believe is the deadline. The deadline. But I would recommend trying to get it in before October 15th. But October 15th is the deadline for both Oxford and Cambridge. So, and basically all the other UK universities operate on like a rolling basis. So actually when I submitted my application for Oxford on like October 4th, I hadn't even like heard back anything from Oxford about interviews or anything like that, and I already got an offer from a different UK university on like October 16th. So like they're very, very quick about it, especially for international students, or some of them are. So you might even hear back from places really, really quickly if you decide to apply to more than one university through UCAS, which I think you should. But basically, Oxford will be in contact with you about having you take tests. For the most part. Most courses require you to take admissions tests set by the university. So some of them you don't have to take tests, some of them you just send in written work, but I think that there's maybe almost like no courses where you don't either have to send in written work or take one of their admissions tests.
So yeah, the admissions tests are things that you should definitely think about revising for. A lot of the courses, especially like the politics, like human sciences, those kinds of courses, we have to do the TSA, which is the thinking skills assessment. You can find like a ton of past papers online. Just do them, because your test score, although it won't decide whether you get in or not, usually I think colleges do have like, or courses do have like a benchmark, like they expect people to get like around.
Your test score will definitely decide like, in large part, whether or not you get an interview, I think.
Yeah, because it's a way of filtering.
Perhaps even more than your personal statement.
Yeah. But definitely register for the test early. If your school won't be a test center for you, make sure you find a place to do the test, because if you don't do the test, you can't come for an interview.
Yeah, I was lucky enough that my school had about, more than a couple students applying to Oxford, so they were willing to administer the test for us. They were in contact, they were able to get the tests. But basically, you have to take the tests. Most of the tests happen on, like, November 1st, November 2nd-ish. I think the day maybe slightly shifts each year, but this information will be available online. You have to be in contact with your school if they'll administer the test for you, and if they're not going to administer the test for you, you have to find a testing center or a school or a university that will administer the test for you on the specific date. So basically, as soon as you submitted your application, as soon as you're sure you're applying to Oxford, you should make sure that you know where you're taking the test, you know which test you need to take.
And you're registered in time.
And you're registered, yeah.
In time. So once you've submitted your UCAS and you've picked a college, you've done your testing, you've done everything that you can do, you just have to wait and wait.
You're going to hear back from them, and they're either going to say that they want you to come for an interview, or they don't want you to come for an interview. And that will be the next thing that we're going to be talking about in this video.
Woo.
So, interviews. How do international students do their interviews?
What is an interview?
What is an interview?
How does it differ?
How do you prepare for an interview? All of these things, and like what you should know as an international student. So I guess the first thing to note as an international student is that you have the option, and this is just for international students, have the option to either interview in person, like British students do, or interview over Skype, like a video chat. I think all colleges offer this for international students because they recognize that not all international students will be able to come to England to attend their interviews.
Especially because usually you get the interview notification only a week before your interview date. So, like, flight, the cost of flights might be very high. You might have something planned. You can't just leave at a moment's notice.
I ended up... Did you come for your interviews?
I did.
So I came for my interviews as well. And my decision to come for my interviews was based on the fact that my friend who went to my high school and was a fresher at Oxford at the time, he's now a third year, was like, Tucker, you have to come for interviews. It was like the most amazing experience. So I did what I could, book tickets, and I ended up actually booking tickets, so I stayed like 2 days extra than they had told me I was required to stay for, because if I booked tickets then, it was much, much cheaper. So I was like, where am I going to stay for these 2 days?
Same.
Luckily, my college, and I think almost all colleges, will say that if you're an international student and you're coming for interviews, and you can't exactly
be there for the exact
right dates, they will let you stay an extra day, extra 2 days, however long you need to stay in college accommodation, and they will accommodate you in college accommodation.
And
everyone who comes
free.
for interviews,
and everything's free. You're when you're staying in college, you don't have to pay for anything. Your food is free because, so it's really good. The only thing you really have to pay for is a flight. But if you, one thing I need to talk about with regards to interviews. So I'm lucky enough to have an Australian passport, which meant that when I came here I didn't have to apply for a visa, but a lot of my friends in Thailand had to apply for a visa, and the visa process can take a while. You won't be able to get a visa a week before your flight.
Oh, so a visa, a tourist visa, to come
to the UK for your interviews. So if you do think, after talking to your teachers, if you do think that you want to come for an interview in person, if you get an interview offer, apply for your visa before you get the offer. I know it's a big risk, but if you're certain that you want to come, you should save yourself money and stress and just apply for the visa.
That's a good point. I never thought about that, because Americans don't need visas to go to the UK, but very, very, very true. That makes a lot of sense.
Oftentimes people wonder whether they should pick to do a Skype interview or a real life interview. Tucker's already talked about the benefits of being here for a real life interview, and I really agree with him. When I was here, I really enjoyed it. I made some friends. Some of them are here, some of them are not here, but we still are in contact, and I feel that your university experience is more than your academics. It's the city, it's the college you're in, it's the people you're surrounded by, so I think it's quite important if you have the means to come here and just explore the place and think, can I imagine myself here? If
you have the means and you're seriously weighing the options, you should definitely, I would say, come for a real life interview. Not because necessarily it will give you a better chance of getting in. I think they really try to stress that you have the same chance of getting in if you do a real life interview or a Skype interview. But just that you get to meet a lot of the people. I met a lot of the people who ended up being my classmates. Being my friends in my year in my college. at interviews, and you also get to explore the city and like really decide whether you like it here. And I think that most people really like when they come for their interviews fall in love with the city of Oxford.
Yeah.
So it's a great place.
It's not a necessity. I have friends who had Skype interviews and are here. So.
I have friends who had Skype interviews and are here as well. So you can definitely get in if you do a Skype interview.
It's more for yourself and what you can do, what you can afford.
Totally. And I know it might be scary, like, how do I prepare for an interview? A lot of British students, like, in their schools, they'll have someone who, like, practices, like, Oxbridge interviews with them. To me, that's crazy, because, like, I had no preparation for an interview. I reached out. I tried to contact people who I know had done it before, asked them, like, for advice, like, did whatever I could to find out anything that I could about interviews. Which is actually why last year when I was on Oxvlog, I made a whole video about, like, my interview experience, and I would we can link that in the description below, but there's also tons of videos that people have made about their interviews and interviews for different specific subjects. And because the interviews for each subject are quite different, I feel like it's quite hard to like just generalize the experience, but I will say there's lots of good YouTube resources about finding like what the interview will be like.
Now we're going to talk about getting an offer.
Yeah. So after you've had your interview, you wait. You wait a little bit longer. And then in the beginning of January, you will find out whether or not Oxford has decided to give you an offer. Your college will let you know whether or not you've gotten an offer. And normally in the UK, this happens through post. This happens through the mail. And you're like, I don't live in the UK, how am I going to get the mail? So luckily...
There's technology.
There's technology nowadays. And I think all colleges will actually email the results to international students. So they will send it to us as well, like they send the packets, welcome packets to everyone who gets in. But for people who live internationally, they will also email. And this is something that they don't do in general for UK students. So they will email us at a certain time. I think I got my email exactly at 11 a.m. on the day, like 11 a.m. UK time.
I got mine at night, Bangkok time.
Bangkok time, yeah. 11 a.m. UK time was when I got my email. So it was like 6 a.m. in America where I was. And it will be sometime around, around that time when you get an email about it. But they will they will email you. You don't have to worry about waiting around for a letter. They will email international
But they'll
students.
also send you a letter.
They'll also send you a letter.
It'll come later.
And if you don't get in, they'll also send you a letter. And there's a lot of different things that your offer could say. It could be you could get an offer from a different college, you could get an open offer, and these all mean different things. And I think there are some good explanations about what the different kinds of offers you can get online as well. So we won't go too into it right now because we're trying to make this for people, specifically international students interested in applying. And that's basically the application process from UCAS.
So well done, you've made it.
To getting an offer. You've made it. You've made it through UCAS, your personal statement, colleges, doing the admissions test, interviews, getting an offer. So what comes next? And that will be in part 2 of this video. We will be talking about coming to Oxford as an international student.
Coming here, the adventure.
Coming here. Because once you get your offer, the work is not done. There's a whole lot that has to be dealt with. Visas, banks, phones,
we don't want to stress them out yet.
That will be part 2.
Part 2.
And link will be like here on the screen. We'll make sure that the part 2 comes up. And or it will be down in the description, I'm not sure. But that's going to be on my channel. So come check out my personal channel, come see part 2, come see all about coming to Oxford as an international student. We'll see you next time, Oxvlog. It's been nice to be back on the channel again. Bye.
Bye.
And make sure to check out part 2.
On his channel.